At 61, he vanished on Christmas Eve and returned 20 years later. On Christmas Eve, at the age of 61, a father kissed his family goodnight, stepped outside into the falling snow, and never came back. Stay with me, because this disappearance would haunt his family for 2 decades. That night was meant to be filled with laughter, gifts, and warmth, but instead it ended in fear, confusion, and unanswered questions. What began as a festive celebration turned into a lifelong wound. The family searched frantically, calling his name into the icy night. Every unanswered call carved deeper scars into their hearts. The police found no signs of struggle, no note, no footprints beyond the driveway. His absence was as sudden and complete as a candle snuffed out in the dark. The wife collapsed in despair, whispering that he would return by morning. But morning came, and the chair at the table remained empty. For 20 years, the family carried his absence like a coffin that was never buried. Stay with me, because what happened when he returned shocked everyone. This story reveals betrayal, survival, shocking revelations, and a family reunion that rewrote 2 decades of pain. The last chapter will leave you speechless. If this story touches you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Every subscription helps us bring you more unforgettable family stories filled with truth, legacy, and hope. Don't miss the ending, it changes everything. Capitulo E. The Vanishing. It was the night of December 24, 1999. The living room glowed with lights, laughter, and the smell of roasted chestnuts. Stay with me, because within hours, joy would turn to despair. The man of the house, 61 years old, seemed quieter than usual that night. His smile was forced, his eyes heavy with unspoken thoughts. No one realized they were seeing his farewell. After dinner, he helped his grandchildren set out cookies for Santa. This ordinary act would be remembered as his final gesture. He kissed his wife gently, held his son's hand firmly, and stepped out to get some air. That sentence became the last words they heard from him for 20 years. Minutes passed, then hours, then the whole night. The silence outside became unbearable. By dawn, panic replaced patience. The family searched the snowy streets, but no trace remained. It was as if the earth had swallowed him whole. Police were called, but the investigation quickly went cold. No evidence, no leads, just a man erased by the night. Neighbors whispered theories, abduction, secret debts, or even another family. Speculation tore at the family's sanity. The wife sat by the window for weeks, watching the driveway, waiting for footsteps that never returned. Her vigil turned love into torment, and so began 20 years of absence. A wound no Christmas could heal. The next chapter reveals how the family survived his disappearance. Capítulo 2. Menos de years of his silence. In the first year, the family clung to hope, keeping his chair empty at every Christmas table. Stay with me, because hope would slowly decay into resentment. The wife lit a candle each night, whispering prayers into the void. Her faith became both her strength and her torment. The son carried the burden of searching, spending money and energy chasing rumors. His obsession nearly destroyed his own marriage. The daughter bottled her grief, smiling for her children but crying alone at night. Her silence became a prison. The grandchildren grew up asking why Grandpa never came back. Their childhoods were marked by absence rather than presence. Years turned into decades, birthdays passed, weddings came and went. Every milestone reminded them of the empty chair. The wife's health declined under the weight of unanswered questions. Uncertainty was killing her faster than time. The son grew bitter, convinced his father had abandoned them by choice. Anger replaced longing. The daughter, though quieter, still believed he might return. Her fragile hope flickered like a candle against the storm. And then, 20 years later, on another Christmas Eve, the door creaked open. The next chapter reveals who stood there. Capítulo 10. The returned snow fell softly outside as the family gathered around the table, older, wearier, but together. Stay with me, because this Christmas Eve would not end like the others. The door opened slowly, and there he was, aged, frail, but unmistakably alive. The room froze in disbelief. The wife dropped her glass, shattering it on the floor. Her heart stopped between rage and relief. The son's fists clenched as if ready to strike. 2 decades of anger boiled to the surface. The daughter gasped, covering her mouth with trembling hands. Her hope had been rewarded, but at a terrible price. The grandchildren, now adults, stared at him like a ghost. They had grown without him, and he was both stranger and family. He spoke softly, I came home. These 3 words were heavier than the 20 years of silence behind them. No one moved at first. The air was thick with questions no one dared to ask. The moment was both reunion and judgment. The son finally shouted, "Where were you?" His voice cracked with rage. This demand pierced the room like a knife. The man lowered his head. "I must tell you everything, but you will hate me for it." The next chapter reveals his confession. The first words, the family stood frozen as he removed his old coat, his hands trembling. "Stay with me," because his first words would cut deeper than silence. He confessed that he had not been taken, nor lost. He had left by choice. This revelation shattered the fragile hope that he had been a victim. The wife collapsed into her chair, whispering, "You chose to leave us." Her pain turned into betrayal. The son's anger erupted. "For 20 years we mourned you. We buried you without a grave." His fury filled the room like fire. The daughter sobbed, torn between joy at his return and horror at his admission. Her heart split in 2. He lowered his head and said, "I thought leaving was the only way to protect you." This cryptic explanation only fueled confusion. The grandchildren, now adults, stared in disbelief. Their entire childhood had been stolen by his choice. The wife demanded, "Protect us from what?" Her voice shook with rage and fear. The question hung heavy in the air. His silence was louder than his confession. Every second of hesitation deepened the wound. Finally, he whispered, "I left to hide a truth that would have destroyed us all." The next chapter reveals that truth. Kapitulawu, the secret life. The man's eyes filled with tears as he confessed he had lived a double life before vanishing. "Stay with me, because this revelation would tear open old wounds." He admitted he had another family, one hidden for decades. The shock hit like lightning across the room. The wife screamed, covering her face. Her entire marriage had been built on lies. The son roared, slamming his fist on the table. "So we weren't enough for you." His voice echoed with betrayal. The daughter collapsed into tears. "All those nights we waited, you were with them." Her grief became unbearable. The grandchildren felt their stomachs churn. The man they longed for had chosen others instead of them. He explained that his secret life was discovered by powerful people and threats had been made. This added a dangerous layer to his confession. "I thought leaving would save you," he said, weeping. His excuse sounded like cowardice wrapped in regret. The wife spat through tears. "You saved no one. You destroyed us." Her words were a blade of truth. But he still had one more revelation, one even more shocking than the double life. The next chapter reveals it. Capítulo 6, Menos the Dangerous Truth. The man gathered strength, his voice trembling as he spoke. "Stay with me, because this confession would explain his 20 years of exile." He revealed that his secret family had ties to crime, debts, and dangerous people. His disappearance was not only betrayal, but survival. He had been forced to choose, stay and risk his family's lives, or vanish and protect them from harm. His decision was cowardly, yet desperate. The son's fury softened into disbelief. "You abandoned us to save us." His anger battled with confusion. The wife shook her head, unwilling to see his choice as noble. Her broken heart saw only betrayal. The daughter whispered, "You should have trusted us. We deserved the truth." Her words pierced him with guilt. The man admitted he had lived in hiding, watching them from afar, writing letters he never dared to send. His absence was haunted by presence. The grandchildren asked if he had ever wanted to return sooner. Their question carried the weight of lost years. He wept, "Every Christmas, I thought of you." But fear chained me. His tears fell like blood from an open wound. And now, 20 years later, he had come back, not just with regret, but with one final request. The next chapter reveals what he asked of them. The final request. The room fell silent as he gathered his courage. "Stay with me," because his request would divide the family even more. He looked at his children and said, "I want your forgiveness before I die." This plea landed like a stone on their hearts. The son exploded. "You don't get to vanish for 20 years and return asking for forgiveness." His fury reignited the storm. The daughter's tears flowed as she whispered, "I don't know if I can forgive, but I don't want to hate you either." Her conflict tore at the family's unity. The wife turned her face away, unable to look at him. Her silence was colder than anger. The grandchildren, though hurt, saw the fragility in his eyes. Their innocence carried the seed of compassion. He begged them not to carry his sins into their own lives. This request was more for their future than his redemption. The son shouted, Forgiveness is earned, not begged for. His voice cracked, revealing the pain behind the rage. The daughter asked, "What do you want us to remember you for? Your absence or your truth?" Her question demanded clarity. He lowered his head. "Remember me as the man who failed but tried to protect you." The next chapter reveals how the family reacted. Capitulo bide the clash of generations. The son stormed out, slamming the door, unwilling to even consider forgiveness. "Stay with me," because his rage threatened to destroy what little remained. The daughter followed, begging him to come back. "We must face this together," she pleaded. Her desperation carried the weight of family survival. The wife sobbed, whispering prayers that no one heard. Her broken faith was the loudest silence in the room. The grandchildren stood between generations, unsure whose side to take. Their youth carried the hope of a different path. The son screamed outside, "He doesn't deserve forgiveness." His voice echoed across the snowy night. The daughter argued, "Maybe forgiveness isn't for him, maybe it's for us." Her words planted a fragile seed of possibility. The son collapsed to his knees, his anger burning into exhaustion. His fight was with his father, but also with himself. Inside, the grandchildren begged their grandmother to rest. "Don't let this kill you too," they whispered. Their voices carried truth through innocence. The father sat alone, holding his face in his hands. His strength was gone, his soul crushed by shame. But before dawn, one of them would take the first step toward healing. The next chapter reveals who it was. Capitulo Joe, the first step toward forgiveness. The daughter returned inside, her face wet with tears, but her voice steady. "Stay with me," because her decision changed everything. She looked at her father and said, "I can't erase 20 years, but I won't let hate define the rest of my life." Her words broke the chains of silence. The father fell to his knees, weeping at her feet. His shame poured out in sobs that filled the room. The wife turned, watching, torn between bitterness and the sight of her daughter's courage. Her silence was cracking. The son returned, his chest heaving with anger, but he froze at the sight of his father broken on the floor. His rage met reality. The grandchildren joined their mother, standing by her side. Their presence made forgiveness seem possible. The daughter whispered, "Forgiveness doesn't excuse you, it frees us." Her wisdom became the seed of healing. The son clenched his fists, trembling, but he did not lash out. His silence was the beginning of surrender. The wife closed her eyes, whispering, "If we forgive, maybe Christmas will no longer be cursed." Her words carried both sorrow and hope. And so, forgiveness began as a fragile spark in the dark. The next chapter reveals how it spread through the family. The Christmas table. The family gathered once more at the Christmas table, the same one where the wound began 20 years earlier. "Stay with me, because this dinner would decide if the curse would end or continue." The chair he once left empty was now filled again, but the air was heavy with tension. His presence felt both healing and haunting. The wife sat at the head of the table, her hands shaking as she poured wine. Her decision would shape the family's path forward. The son refused to look at his father, staring only at his plate. His anger still boiled beneath the surface. The daughter reached across the table, taking her father's hand. Her gesture was fragile but powerful. The grandchildren tried to smile, but their eyes carried questions too heavy for their youth. They were living the legacy of silence. The father raised his glass, whispering, "To truth, even when it hurts." His voice trembled under the weight of regret. The wife finally spoke, her voice sharp. "Truth is late, but lies lasted too long." Her words were both accusation and acknowledgement. The son muttered, "This table will never be the same." His bitterness stained the celebration. But in that fragile moment, the possibility of healing still lingered. The next chapter reveals whether forgiveness spread or shattered. Capitulo sheathed, the breaking point. The son slammed his hand against the table, his anger erupting. "Stay with me, because this outburst nearly destroyed their fragile peace." He shouted, "You left us to suffer while you lived your secret life. You don't deserve this seat." His rage cracked through every wall of restraint. The grandchildren cried, begging them all to stop fighting. Their innocence cut through the chaos like a blade. The daughter stood, shielding her father with her presence. Her courage tested her brother's fury. The wife whispered, "Enough. We will not let this night turn into another curse." Her trembling voice carried the authority of pain. The son's breathing slowed, his fists unclenched, but his eyes still burned with rage. His struggle was between hate and hope. The father whispered, I will leave again if that is what you want." His words struck like a ghost, threatening to vanish twice. The daughter cried, "No, you stay. Running away again solves nothing." Her plea was both command and prayer. The son turned away, silent, trapped between betrayal and blood. His silence was louder than shouting, and in that silence, the choice of whether to reconcile or reject still hung in the air. The next chapter reveals the decision. Capitulo Shah, the choice, the wife, stood slowly, her fragile frame commanding the room. "Stay with me," because her choice was the turning point of everything. She looked at her husband and said, "I cannot forget. I may never forgive, but I refuse to let my children inherit only hate." Her words carried the weight of survival. The son stared at her in shock. Her strength broke the chains of his anger. The daughter whispered, "Mother, you're right. Forgiveness is not about him. It's about us." Her words echoed the truth they needed to hear. The grandchildren hugged their grandmother, repeating her words in innocent voices. Their embrace turned sorrow into hope. The father wept, knowing her words were mercy he did not deserve. His tears were a confession more powerful than any speech. The son's jaw trembled. For the first time, his eyes softened toward his father. This small shift was the beginning of change. The family joined hands around the table, hesitant but united. Their circle was broken yet whole. The wife closed her eyes and whispered, "Let this be the last Christmas of silence." Her voice turned grief into prayer. And so, the family made their choice, not complete forgiveness, but the decision to move forward. The next chapter reveals their new beginning. The slow healing the weeks that followed were filled with uneasy peace. Stay with me, because healing is never instant. It is slow, fragile, and full of setbacks. The son avoided his father, but no longer with rage, instead with exhaustion. His silence was the first step toward release. The daughter visited daily, bringing her children, determined to rebuild what time had stolen. Her persistence carried the light of hope. The wife sat quietly, neither forgiving nor condemning, but choosing not to let hatred consume her. Her choice became the anchor of the family. The grandchildren asked questions, and this time the adults answered truthfully. Their honesty planted new roots of trust. The father helped with small things, fixing a chair, cooking soup, gestures that spoke louder than apologies. His actions were attempts at redemption. The son, watching silently, began to see not a betrayer, but a broken man. This shift cracked open the possibility of compassion. The daughter reminded everyone, "We can't erase 20 years, but we can choose tomorrow." Her wisdom guided them forward. The wife whispered prayers at night, thanking God not for the return, but for the chance to choose peace. Her faith had transformed from bitterness to resilience, and so, the family began the slow journey from pain toward healing. The next chapter reveals the turning point of reconciliation. Capítulo 14. The turning point. It was Christmas again. 1 year later, when the family gathered once more. Stay with me, because this moment would show if wounds truly healed. The same table that had once been cursed now held laughter, though quieter, softer, fragile. Hope returned in whispers. The son finally spoke to his father in more than one-word sentences. This small shift was monumental. The father apologized once more, but this time not with excuses, only with truth. His sincerity pierced the silence. The daughter smiled, tears in her eyes. "This is the Christmas I prayed for." Her joy softened everyone else's grief. The wife raised her glass, saying, "We are not whole, but we are together." Her blessing gave dignity to their broken unity. The grandchildren clapped and laughed, carrying the energy of innocence. Their joy was proof that love can be reborn. The son looked at his father and said, "I can't forgive the past, but I don't want to lose the future." This was his truest confession. The father wept openly, grateful for even a fragment of reconciliation. Tears became his final language, and in that moment, the curse of 20 Christmases began to fade. The next chapter reveals the farewell of a lifetime. Capítulo 15, menos de final farewell. A few years later, the father grew weak, his body frail from the weight of age and regret. Stay with me, because this farewell closed the circle of his story. The family gathered at his bedside, holding the hands of the man who had once vanished. This time, he would not disappear. The son whispered, "I never forgave you fully, but I loved you anyway." His words freed them both. The daughter kissed his forehead, whispering, "You came back." And that was enough. Her grace gave peace to his final moments. The wife sat quietly, her hand resting on his chest. "You left me once, but I will not leave you now." Her strength became his comfort. The grandchildren wept, thanking him for the lesson of truth, even when painful. Their tears carried both grief and wisdom. The father smiled weakly, whispering, "Thank you for letting me come home." His final words closed the wound of absence. When he passed, the family cried together, but this time in unity, not division. Their mourning was heavy, but their bond was stronger. They buried him on Christmas Eve, the same night he had vanished decades ago. The circle of his story was complete, and so, the family carried forward not a legacy of disappearance, but of reconciliation, truth, and the choice to love again. This unforgettable ending reminds us that forgiveness, though imperfect, is still powerful.